Do you have an extra agenda for me?
Here you go, Terry.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't have one either. It's okay.
So the first subject, did everybody have a chance to read the minutes that were sent to us by email?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes.
And a second?
Second.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion to approve the minutes is approved. And I'd like to move on to, I'm not sure what the public comment element is because there is no public here to comment. So we're.
One person.
What am I, Councilmember?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were with the City of Vero Beach. No, please. Okay. My apologies. Could you state your name and?
Sure, Mark Mucher, 617 Indian Lilac Road. I don't have anything prepared. I would just like the opportunity, like we have at most of these meetings, to pop up at almost any time, you know, when something interesting comes up, if that's all right with you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely, and we welcome public comment because this is new for all of us. So, you know, we're just trying to work our way through formulating a plan, an action plan to submit to the city, and we have a timetable for it, and we'd like to get this action plan submitted by the end of March. So that it can be presented to the City Council for approval in April.
Right, I read your last minutes, and,
Okay.
and I do have some experience and thoughts on this matter, so thank you.
And if you want to share those thoughts, we'd be glad to hear them. So thank you, Mark. So I had asked, and I know our first meeting was canceled, but I had asked that the committee prepare some items for the action plan, and I'd like to get started with that because that's going to be, and be bold. Make your vision as bold as you can. There are many, many things we can do in this economic development zone to improve the zone and not just focus on the 14th Avenue downtown area, but maybe have a vision that encompasses the entire zone or different areas of the zone. We're going to have limited monies initially, but perhaps with some grants and some other contributions, we can encompass a vision that's a lot larger than our monies that we're going to raise through the incremental tax will allow. So be bold about it, and I'd like to just kind of open the floor to the committee and just start enumerating some ideas for the economic development plan.
Well, Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
Yeah, of course.
First of all, I did submit some of my thoughts via email. I don't know if you received them or not, but I did send some in. And
I did.
if you didn't get them, it's probably because I sent them to the wrong place.
Yes, Barry, I didn't get them, and now keep in mind, and please give us a comment on that because of the sunshine law.
Right, you cannot email a member. You need
No,
to email
I
it to
sent
the
them
clerk.
to you.
You
I
sent them?
to your office, yes. That was the instruction.
Okay, I
So you
didn't
didn't get
raise.
it?
No, sir.
All right, then I screwed up. So, sorry about that.
Strike one.
Yeah. I can go home now.
You have two more.
So the procedure was correct, and
Yes, I did not send them directly to anybody on the committee. I sent them to...
Sherry, do you want to share that email address with us? and
Yeah,
make
give
sure
it
we
to
have
one more time. So obviously I did something wrong.
I'll just give you mine. It's S. Philo, P as in Paul, HILO @covb.org.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I will definitely make a note of that so that I don't do that again. In thinking about this over the last several weeks, you know, what I think we should do is look at an incremental plan. It's such a wide area, and even though it's all, you know, downtown, it has a lot of diversity in the different sections of downtown. You know, there's no, you know, a lot of cities, they have a big downtown with, you know, that's where the tall buildings are. We don't have that. Our downtown area is spread out with many different kinds of businesses and residences. So I think what might work is to first break up the downtown area on the map into sections. For example, we do have the downtown, historic downtown art district now. That's a recognized entity, 14th Avenue. And we have other areas that we can separate out and identify specific needs for those areas. And I think that if we look at it incrementally, sort of a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10-year concept, because this money's going to accumulate over time. We're not going to have immediate, large amount of funds immediately available to us. That if we come up with ideas that are designed to show slow improvement over time, we'll be more successful and people will be more accepting of what we're trying to do. Some of the things that I thought we could do inexpensively to start with, downtown in the art district, the art galleries got together with some of the other businesses in town and put banners up. And the banners are really nice. People notice them. They're colorful. And one of the thoughts I had was that we could create banners for the entire downtown area and perhaps have 4, 5, maybe 6 different banners to represent the different types of things going on in those areas. And that would be a good start because it would identify what the downtown area is to the general public. They could see that, they can know, oh, we're in downtown now. So I thought that was a good start. Some of the other things that I think were on my list that were helpful, not helpful, I'm sorry, that I thought would help identify the area were kiosks and directional identification kiosks. We created on the parking committee on the beach. We determined that there was a definite need to direct people away from Sexton Plaza, and then the city came up with some really good signage. And I think if we worked with the city, we could do that for the entire downtown area. To, just first of all, it would have a look to it that would identify it as a downtown thing and would help people to know where things are. That was another idea, and I'm trying to remember back to the thing that I wrote. Lighting. Perhaps in certain areas of the downtown where it makes sense, it doesn't obviously make sense on US 1, but if we could look at aesthetically beautiful, old-fashioned lighting to determine the downtown area, that's a much more expensive and ambitious project, but it's something that would definitely be, add some beauty and identification to the area. So those are 3 ideas that I had. I did have a few more in there. I'm trying to remember what they are off the top of my head, and I'll look in my email and see where that went and try and recreate that for everyone.
Great. Thank you, Barry, and thanks for thinking of that distribution list to the rest of the group. And keep in mind, everything's got to go through the City of Vero Beach on the distribution. We can't communicate with each other. I can't tell you that for me, chairing a committee like this at the city for the first time, that's a difficult prospect because I've thought the whole time between last meeting and this meeting that I sure would like to communicate with the rest of the group, but I've been careful not to. So keep that in mind that we do have the Sunshine Law, and we have to send all our communications through a universal point. And sure,
I didn't get your Christmas card.
But go, Gary.
Just since you're asking for comments, I was thinking along the same lines. Obviously, an incremental plan that was, I think, just obvious with the limitation of funds. Starting out with things or ideas with little or no money. then look into other businesses or organizations that may want to go ahead and donate early, and some ideas to motivate them to get involved. I mean, there's several local businesses where we all network, we all know what they are, to reach out to those organizations who may want to start funding it before the trust builds up in money. And then trying to think about eventually leading to capital improvement projects. One of the thoughts I had, and this is, by way of analogy, if you're going to paint an old house, you take off the old paint first. So rather than just painting over problems, I mean, one of the issues that I see, our office is downtown. At 6 o'clock, nobody walks out alone to the parking lot. My biggest problem of guests coming into town, not that it's an unsafe area, but there's some issues downtown. Are there ways to address those issues? I know they've cut back some bushes in the area because people would stay there or live there or sleep there. I've had employees approached in the parking lot by...
Can I ask, which parking lot are you referring to specifically? Because there are a number of different lots
Sure.
around.
Our business is located in the old courthouse, downtown Vero, owned by the Brack family. Very beautiful building. You walk out that building, and I don't care which direction you go in, any of those surrounding parking lots that have transient or vagrant on occasion. Used to be, we have a dedicated parking lot sort of back towards the church. There used to be a food pantry there. I don't think it's still active, but that used to draw a lot of folks, and the girls would sometimes be approached. So I think about, the Friday events, where people are going to park, families can be approached, kids can be approached, the parades, all those things like that. When I have people in town or we're thinking about things, that's always in my mind. Across the street at the park, beautiful park, kids go play there. The public bathrooms on any day, you can look out and see non-family people there, obviously not business people. They're, again, whether it's transient, I know there's activities there. Those are issues. Is there a way to address those? More patrols, more ways that we can get, because I think we make it, there's two things. You want to draw people. There's also eliminate the deterrence of why people would not go downtown.
We keep them safe when they are there, too.
Right. So,
We know that there's there's a large homeless problem in Indian River County. And, Jay and I have discussed this, and I've been involved in some charitable organizations that have addressed this. I'm just curious, because we have Mr. Kramer here with us. Does the city have any particular vagrancy laws or any particular position on this issue?
Jay Kramer, City Council. Yeah, we do. If the police have modified their policy on homelessness. I mean, I think everybody remembers the McDonald's incident that we had last summer. Because of that, the police have been a little bit more engaged with the homeless issue. They have, they've basically been stopping more often, talking with the homeless people, offering them rides to shelters and encouraging them to move along and do their business. But as far as as combating the problem, we're pretty much leaning on the homeless shelters and a lot of the organizations here in the county to kind of help with that issue. But we're engaging it more often than not, and in fact, I think you might be seeing the police probably stopping more often. I know I have. They'll stop on a corner where somebody will be, they'll have a sign or something, and they'll just ask them, what's going on? Can we help you? Can we, give you a ride somewhere? So they're actively engaging the homeless more and more.
Well, and I bring that up simply because if we start doing things to bring people in, but there's always that deterrent. You brought up the art district, and you can walk great down that street, but don't go too far a ride before you walk. I mean, we have that on streets on both sides, and if you get too far north or south of the art district, you know what's there. So that's an issue I think we should openly discuss and figure out how to. Well, I think if we start with one area like the art district and start moving out from there, it's easier than
Mm-hmm.
It may be an issue, and then some of that could be, whether it's patrols, off-duty police. I'm not sure what the answer is, but to discuss it, I like the idea of lighting. Obviously, lighting.
Well, I was just going to say that lighting
Right.
is, and that's something that we can perhaps affect. Lighting in these parking areas is an issue. And the more lighting, obviously, the less people are likely to hang out there. So whether they be, homeless people, kids, because kids like places to hang out too. So lighting, I think, is something that is definitely something we should be talking about as a, maybe not a short or a long-term project, but a mid-term project. I think that could be a good one.
It should definitely be an item on our action plan, and I was thinking as Gary was talking about the safety issue, and Eric Hessler, who now serves as the president of Main Street and is one of the owners of the Grove, observes every night these vagrants right across the street in the park, in Pocahontas Park, and it is an issue, as you've said, Gary, and when darkness descends and it's earlier now because we're not on daylight saving time, it becomes a big issue, and I think it's a deterrent to people coming to the downtown area. But I have an idea that maybe we could work with the Chamber, with the Heritage Center, with some of these organizations that are already here downtown, and either have a citizen patrol. But what I'd really like to see, Jay and Tim, would be a little more police presence. And I recall the days when police used to walk a beat. And I'm thinking, well, maybe that's a bit old-fashioned in today's world, but a bicycle policeman or a Segway policeman, and just being there present, maybe initially between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. or 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. would be a heck of a deterrent, and they'd get to know people in the community. Back in those days when police used to have a beat, it was a regular beat for them, like the postman. You knew the policeman that had that beat, and that can be a very strong deterrent. Someone that, like a police officer that people will generally respect, might tell someone sleeping on a bench in the park, look, it's time to move on, and just give them a polite, suggestion that they can't sleep in the park and they'll have to find another place. There are organizations, and we've been working with organizations, Main Street Community Business Alliance, and we just had a meeting in Gary's office about helping with the homeless people, and there's a number of places in tent cities, and there's even the old Citrus Motel. So little by little, we're trying to address the homeless problem, but no matter how much we do, it seems to grow every year.
There are approximately 1,000 people at any given time homeless living in the county. That statistic I'm pretty up to date on.
That's the figure we heard, right, Gary? Yeah. So.
And just to follow up, I think if you had a presence, after a while, they don't even have to confront anybody. People just don't stop going to those areas. They go to the areas where they're not going to be confronted. Part of it is that. And then you feel a lot more freedom to walk from one side of downtown to the other streets to do business or to eat or do whatever you want. It's because on the popular days when it's the Friday Fest or when the arts are here, or even now during the season, a lot more people. But then come 9 o'clock, it starts thinning out. You head up and back home. So I think lighting is key. I think with the new
and that's something that's in our,
Right. With the technology, LEDs, it's not going to cost electricity that much. So the initial cost, whether that's part of this committee's plan or donations sought from local businesses, because I think a lot of businesses might like the idea. We can come up with ideas, placards, and people donate benches. They can also do other things to get some sort of recognition for their business. I think you get some donations for it. To follow up on I like the kiosk idea of directions, let people know where they are. You're here. The only other thought I had on that, as far as drawing people in down the road, capital improvement, and again, this is down the road, is a lot more Wi-Fi hotspots, because I think that's huge. And then, if you don't feel disconnected when you go downtown, you're still interacted, and that's a big thing, to be able to be in the park. And I think with technology, it won't cost.
Mark, were you waiting to comment? Please.
If you don't mind, Mark Mucher again. I think Gary touched started to touch on one of the ideas I had, and that was this. I mean, your whole task is kind of a chicken egg thing. You've got a revenue side, and then you've got an expenditure side. And I think the example given in the backup was that if the council is generous enough to give you 95% of the tax increase, taxable value increase, and I don't know whether that's going to be the case, because that seems pretty extreme. There might be a lot of people in the other parts of the city yelling that you're taking money away from them. But let's say if it is the case, what was the example? You get a couple $1,000s with a 2% price increase?
The example that Tim presented was more around 4,500. Tim, was that the figure, more or less?
I thought it was a 2.
38.
Well, it's 3,800.
3,800, okay.
Okay, so
Oh, I'm just going to say, but the actual tax value has gone down. See, so there is no money right now for the time being. So,
right. So one of the things you may want to start talking about, as opposed to how you're going to spend it, and as if I recall, these fancy streetlights are up to $80,000 or something for one. So that's one thing you might want to keep in mind. But if you can do something to accelerate the growth in the value in the area, and certainly safety is part of that. It's kind of an intangible part, but either bring in new businesses or actually building brick and mortar. And then you got another problem. Let's say somebody builds on the MacArthur lot down the street here. They would be responsible for a large amount of the tax increase in the district, and they might want some of that money spent in their area as opposed to the Arts District down on 14th and Old Dixie. So there's a lot of things in play here, but I think you really need to be looking at ways to increase the taxable value of the district as opposed to, just waiting for prices to normally rise.
Well, first of all, thank you. And secondly, I think that as we go along, that is something that we've discussed addressing. As our chairman said at the beginning, because our funding is limited from the tax base, we only the tax money only comes from our district. It doesn't come from any other areas, the beach or anything like that. So we'll be getting funding. Was it 1% of the tax from businesses in that area? So it's limited. So we are, in fact, looking at. This is our first real meeting. We've only had one other meeting. So this is our first meeting, and one of the things we'll be looking at is how to get revenues, as Terry said, from perhaps from grant money, which is out there. We're working. We're going to talk to people about what might be available and look at that. So that will have to be addressed, and it reminded me of another thought that I had, which is, and I don't know, Terry, we have to see if this is something that's possible for us to do, but in our midterm thinking, we might look at some marketing to draw attention to downtown and to draw new business to downtown. I'm not sure if we're limited to capital improvements or not, but if we can spend some money, if we can get some money and spend some money to draw attention through different marketing methods, be it advertising or social media or whatever, then we could start to let people know what downtown is and what the potential is, and hey, come on down. So
now that raises a question in my mind, and I think Tim would have to answer this. is it under the purview of this committee to deal with other than the tax increment financing issues? Because some of the things that Barry's talking about sound more like Main Street type activities. In other words, can you go out and get grants and put them in this trust fund, or is this trust fund only from the tax increment financing?
The way that the ordinance is written, and Tim, please correct me if I'm mistaken, is that we can get grants, and so we can attract other monies other than tax increment money into the economic development zone for the purposes of projects, executing projects that are part of the economic development plan. But I'd like to go back, Mark, just for a minute and drill down in this, because we were all mailed this little package, and so the date that this has to be submitted, our real goal here is to put together a plan and submit to the city for approval by April 1st. There's a reason for that. We want 2014 to be the base year, and in order to make 2014 the base year so that the funds become available in 2015, that would become the first increment year, we must submit this plan by April for approval so that it can then be submitted to the property appraiser's office by May 1st. So the city has to approve it in April so we can submit it to the appraiser. This is in the procedures for appropriation of funds. This is page 3 of our handout. And this is very important, so I really want to stick as much as possible to the plan and to what we have at hand, because that's a really strict time limit, and we don't have much time to execute this plan. So I'd like to drill down, and I'd like to go through some of the things that are in this, and the committee is charged with preparing an economic development plan. So that's what we're here really to talk about, and that's what I'd really like to focus on for this particular meeting. This is, again, in the authorities and duties, and we're also directed to make an appropriate recommendation to the city council for any amendments that we might have to the plan. So it goes on to say about the plan that we need to establish certain things with regard to the plan, and one is the initial, the base year. So we really want to focus on making 2014 the base year. The second is the initial increment year. The other is a point that Mark brought up, and that's a proportion of the amount of the increment that's going to be dedicated to capital projects within the economic development zone, and it could be up to 95%. And I think since we're not talking about a great deal of money, Mark, I have a feeling and that we'll get the 95% and we'll be able to funnel that back in. And keep in mind, this is only that increment of the taxes within this district, so it's benefiting all these businesses and all the residential properties who are not contributing within the district, because it's being refunneled back into the district. So I don't know that we'll get much backlash. We may get backlash, as Mark said, between some people that are saying, well, you're spending it on 14th Avenue or you're spending it on State Road 60. What about the US 1 area that's part of the zone? And there's only so much we can do with the limited funds that we have, so it's the charge of this committee to come up with a plan that's realistic, that's viable, that's consistent with the amount of money that we're going to raise. But also, I like what Barry said, and maybe initially start with a 1, 3, and a 5-year plan and look forward a little bit. There are people in this community that can write a check for, just for example, the traffic calming for State Road 60. I think the lower cost plan, Tim, is around $100,000. The restriping plan is. Am I in the ballpark on that, or am I? I can't remember because it's been quite a while. But there are people in the community that can fund projects like that with the stroke of a pen. Or a band shell in Pocahontas Park. We've seen contributions like this for the hospital, for Riverside Theater, for the Art Museum, and so there are many people in the community that fund community projects, and we have to think boldly, because some of these people might step up if we have a bold, viable plan, and they might make a contribution and they might help us fund some of these ideas that we'll come up with. So read over this carefully, particularly pages 3 and 4. That should be the focus of what we're doing here in the next few meetings. We really need to come up with this plan. We really need to address these 3 or 4 points of establishing the base year, establishing the first increment year, deciding on the 95% or the 90% or whatever percentage is going to go of that increment, and executing and then coming up with a viable plan itself, and maybe initially 3 or 4 items. Maybe it could be safety, lighting, sidewalks, but lightings that have to, or kiosks, lighting projects that have to do with capital improvements. So I'd like the committee to focus on that because we have a limited amount of time. This is our first meeting, but we'd like to get this done, and we'd like to get this submitted to the city and have our submission ready by the end of March so we can appear before the city council in one of their 2 April meetings. So go ahead. Jessica, I haven't heard from you. Do you?
My suggestion to expand on what Gary had originally said, and Barry's points were my original idea for our first action plan is to expand on the art district, to use things like Barry had said with the banners. The public actually pays to have those printed. They have on each one of them, there is a business listed on the banner. So, right, so they are sponsored, they are paid for. It's nothing that's coming out of our monies, which would then take our money and be able to put it back into the district. So say it was $100 to do the banner, we could charge $200 to do it, because there is upkeep with them. There are, they have to be taken down in storms and things like that. They have to be put up. So there is a cost to the city in order to put them there. There's equipment and things. But to go with what Gary had said about expanding on the arts district, I think that is key. It is something that is utilized by everyone in the community. So I think it's not something that just the people within the downtown district will approve of and will back, but it's something that the entire county will back. A lot of people use it. There's a lot more businesses, bless you. There is a lot more businesses coming into that area. There's the new pizza place that just started. The biggest problem with that place is there's a lot of people that don't want to walk from there to, say, the Kilted Mermaid afterwards. It goes with the safety issue. It's not a walkable area up to a certain point. I mean, when you're at like the Kilted and it goes, just that little strip, and then it stops. Because the walkability changes, the lighting changes, everything in that area just kind of stops after that. So that's a big part of it. And I think that area and kind of expanding on that will be huge. There's a lot of businesses, there's a lot of firms that you could walk to, but it's just not aesthetically pleasing. It's not the best place to walk. But if we just expand and it's just a smaller area, maybe, 1 or 2 blocks out, south, maybe 1 block east, 1 block west of 14th Avenue. It's a small area. I think it would help with our cost that we'll be generating the first time around. So it would keep our plan smaller, but the vision is utilized by everyone.
I agree. And I like your idea. I really like your idea about the sponsored banners. That's what we did downtown, right. And it worked out great. And if we came up with a plan and went to the various businesses and said, "You're in this area. Mm-hmm. This is the banner designed for your area. It'll say this, and then you'll have your sponsored ad at the bottom." I think we could generate enough money to pretty much dot most of the areas that we want to dot, at least the main streets and avenues. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great idea. The other thing, and this is, again, something that, Tim, maybe you could tell us, because I noticed that there are bus stops for the GO line in different areas. They just put one in front of the Walmart on Route 60. And I noticed a couple of them down on Miracle Mile and a few other places. There are no bus stops. And I'm talking about not bus stops, I'm sorry, benches or shelters. There are none downtown that I know of. There's certainly none on 14th Avenue. And I think those are a really good thing. It just shows that, it's an area that's in use, and, the ones that they have are attractive. But I'm wondering if it would be allowed to have sponsored bus stops. So it would mean a little bit of advertising on the side of the bus stop.
That's what they do in
They
the
do
big
that.
cities.
Yeah, they do that in the big cities,
sell
and
the
they generate a
advertising.
lot of money, and it could be a revenue source. Now, it doesn't have to be anything garish or overly large, but it could be a way to generate some revenue, and I think we should have the bus stops. Excuse me, the bus stations anyhow.
What's the mechanism for this committee reaching out to local businesses to find that answer? Are there businesses willing to sponsor?
Gary, can you speak into the mic?
I mean, what's the mechanism for these ideas for sponsorship, be they banners or stops or some other ideas that we can come up with to get to local businesses? I mean, we can't go out, so what's the...
The question that I have to you, well, what you were saying is, are we a 501c3? So if someone donated to us, it's a tax write-off kind of situation, or?
No, you're an advisory committee to the
Okay.
city council. So basically, any kind of grants and all that's all going to be handled through the city. So
Right, we
a
wouldn't be
donate-
actually doing anything.
Right.
This would be the plan
Yeah.
that we present to the city. And then the
Exactly.
city has to come up with some kind of way, group, or whatever to initiate the plan.
Right. I mean, there'll be implementation of it, because I don't see you're really just the advisory body. It doesn't mean in the future there wouldn't be other things that go on, but that's it. So the contributions and all that would go through the city. The council would have to approve a lot of
Right.
this. So it isn't like you can be on your own doing stuff. You'll want city council
Right.
approval of it. The other thing I want to add, the advertising on shelters was something the city didn't support for that, and those are generally through grants and for those shelters. I mean, we could look into, certainly, to see if some could be done. I don't know if they've...
When you say those shelters put up by grants, where did the grant money come from for them?
Usually the state and feds and then DOT.
How did they determine where they go?
Well, they have their own, they look at ridership and all that, and that's how they come up with the thing, basically. So, and then there's permitting that has to go on in the right-of-way and all that. Most of, we had enough problems with they're putting bus stops all over the place. Some places were not safety. The safety concerns weren't totally addressed. But
Here's a question that
yeah.
I have, Terry and Tim. We're an advisory committee, so we're coming up with concepts, ideas, a plan, et cetera. Usually, when you put together a plan like this, you would put numbers attached to the projects. We don't have the capacity to do the research for a cost analysis on any of these things. So I assume that we're just going to, lay out our ideas, and then if they like the ideas, then someone is going to have to sit down and figure out what this thing costs.
And, it's an excellent point. Tim,
Yeah,
did you
I'm
wanna
sorry.
comment? Go
Just to
ahead.
answer
Yeah.
your question. And the one thing I want to point out, you certainly as individuals can go out and talk to as long as you're not working as a group, to come back to the body to explain, that I've talked to Main Street and this is what we've agreed to. So please feel free to do that. You don't have a staff, so a lot of it, you as the volunteers on this board are going to have to be the catalyst to get going. Now, the city, and I can't speak necessarily the council, but to set this thing up, I think we fully knew that you're going to need some support. So you can get basic information, but if you need some cost numbers, I am sure the city manager and the staff would help you, like Public Works. They have cost numbers, like if you're putting pavement down, and so we can come up with some numbers for you. You know, if you could come up with the ideas and have some specifics, the more information you have, the better. But that would be, the staff is going to do, we will try to do some support for you, even though you don't really have technically a staff.
And that's thank you, Tim, because that's exactly what occurred with Main Street and our flower beautification projects, and we really coordinated with the city and developed a very precise budget. We knew exactly what our costs were going to be, and so those tools are available to us either through the city and in some cases even through private contracting firms, which we also use in that plant and flower beautification project. So we use the nurseries, we use some of the firms that are available. There are general contractors that would contribute their time and maybe help us put together budgets. But I think initially, if we could just look at the projects, come out with an outline format for the projects, then we could put a number to them. And even if the number is a guesstimate and not a precise estimate, we need to come up with this economic development plan, and we need to do it under the time frame we've been given.
So we're essentially generating a wish list. Money's not the issue now, but
that's the way I see it, Gary, because it's more important to get the plan approved than it is to get the detail on the estimates of the cost of the plan.
So we have the interim things we talked about, zero or no money, mid-range, and then long-term capital improvements, ban shells. Another idea to throw in the mix, it might solve some of that safety issue. You see these 15-person golf cart things they use in different tourist areas. 2 of them doing circles. It'd be a lot easier to transport someone from our district to the other businesses on the back streets, and then that could expand out. Sorry?
You're talking about a shuttle service.
Not a full-size bus, but the little ones you hop in, hop out.
Yeah. A trolley, a shuttle service.
Maybe an electric one or something like that.
Electric, 15 passenger. Because a lot of people walk up and down the art district. Mm-hmm. They have a hard time crossing over 60.
Right.
I mean, safety reasons to get to that next block. So if you started our district and then expanded the whole concept north-south and east-west, again, that might solve part of the safety issue. In the interim, as more businesses develop, and again, that's a mid-range kind of idea to throw out.
There's no question that 60 is a big problem with downtown. No matter how you look at it, it's a problem for either from a safety point of view or a commercial point of view. This is something that I've heard on all of the committees, almost all the committees I've sat on. 60, and that's a bear. It's a bear because there's so many things involved in that, including state, federal, et cetera, et cetera. So. I don't really know if that's something right now that we should touch. Because
I think so, Barry, and be bold, and I love that, and it's on my list, but crossing over State Road 60, and I know that would be expensive, and they just did a very expensive crossing in Fellsmere for the trail. And it may be that maybe we set the wheels in motion through our suggestion, because a crossing like that might cost $250,000 or more. And I'm talking about an elevated crossing because State Road 60 effectively divides the downtown. It's always been an issue. It'll always continue to be an issue. And a crossing over State Road 60 is something I would like to see included in the plan. At least we're bringing attention, we're bringing focus to a problem that continues to divide the downtown area. I know, Tim, you were starting to get up, and if you want to comment on this.
I think right now, just had an update on Route 60. We're going to submit a capacity reduction application to FDOT, Florida Department of Transportation. And so soon, because we'd like to get the state money to help fund when they have to refurbish that road, because that would take care. I think that's the answer. I'm not for elevated pedestrian on this thing. I think we need to have pedestrians on, park cars, create a sense of slowing that traffic down and getting that. I think putting a walkway may be more expensive in many ways than all that, but I'm not going to argue with that. But one thing I wanted to point out to y'all, I think you need to have some goals or objectives, because you're not going to have any money for these projects to show where you're trying to go with all this stuff to the council. That would be my suggestion. you've come up with some good stuff. We want more diversity in down. I would have some objectives in what you're trying to do that. If safety is a concern, something that the council can look at and say, these are what this project's for. And it gives it your end state, but you're not going to be able to do a lot of things up front. And I don't mean to be. I'm trying to help you all out to be able
Tim,
to
I appreciate that. And so maybe a focus would be making the length of the crossing a little bit longer. So the time period I'm talking about, perhaps maybe making it a little better striped and a little more distinct. Maybe those signs that we have that are in the city on 14th Avenue, maybe one or two of those when pedestrians are in the crossing. I mean, that would be difficult to enact in State Road 60, but increasing the safety element of the crossings that we already have and increasing the visibility of the crossings we already have through lighting, through better signalization, through maybe better striping might be a more viable plan, but I still think we need to be bold and look as far forward as we can, and this may be something that is 10 years down the road. So.
No, I'm just trying to point out you need to show where you're going, not necessarily all the things. So if the safety is a big concern and security and all, I think that needs to be stated as objective to help the downtown. And then all these other projects, it's up to you all to make how you think it's best to do that. But then the council has something they're looking at. You have an economic development plan. You may not have the money for all that. You may have to be working to get grants and working with other organizations. But they say, yes, we think this is a good idea for the downtown, and you get that support. So that would be the plan, would be part of it. It's not just the improvements that you identified, because you may not know what all they are until you get into this more. But it shows you're trying to work to some sort of economic development to enhance the downtown area. So I hope that. Just trying to help you out.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Can I say something, Terry? Because while you're talking about that just popped an idea in my head, which I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I think we can divide our attentions into specific areas. So, and these areas would identify specific problems. So, what I wrote down is, here are the issues: safety, 1; beautification, 2; business development, 3; awareness, general awareness of the district and what it's about, 4. If we use those 4, and maybe there's some other categories, I'm not sure, but those are the ones that popped into my head. But if we take those 4 categories and say, okay, what in those 4 categories do we want to accomplish and can we accomplish? So in safety, better lighting, better marking, et cetera. Beautification, banners, blah, blah. Business development, what can we do to encourage businesses to look at downtown? Maybe there's a marketing issue there. Maybe there's just some kind of an outreach. I'm not sure, but
doing your 1 and 2 might increase the business opportunities.
And then overall awareness, perhaps some kind of campaign. I don't mean, the Tourist Commission brings people to Vero Beach. I'm just saying within Vero Beach, to allow people to know that they don't have to be afraid to go downtown. And, there are these things that are happening, et cetera, which brings more people, more traffic into the community. The more development there is, and the more people coming in, the more money spent, et cetera, et cetera. So I saw, as Tim was talking, I saw those 4 things as the areas that we can address, and I think if we look at them as individual areas, it'll help focus our attention on what we need to accomplish.
And Barry, I appreciate that you've really organized your ideas, and probably the only one seated here at the table that has a well-organized plan. On the business development side, I would suggest that's already the charge of Main Street, Vero Beach. We've been very successful at it.
Main Street is for Main Street. We're talking about a much bigger district, so I think it goes beyond Main Street and their charge.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But I think that if we focus more on the project side of it rather than the business development side, because I don't know that we'll have funds necessarily to funnel into something that's not a capital improvement project. And that's the way I see it. Am I correct when I say that, Tim? Is that...
I also think, though, to kind of go with what Barry had said, the safety and the beautification and the awareness parts of it will aid the business side of it. It will bring
There's
people,
no question.
right.
There's no question, and we can
I don't
implement a
think
plan
there's
that
really
would address
anything,
those issues.
Right, but I don't think there's anything particular that we can do that will bring business to this area, but the awareness part of it, getting the people to feel safe in the area, getting the right lighting and the walkability portions of it would all benefit that business side of things. And that's an ultimate goal. That's what Tim was saying about having that funnel, so to say. And these are our ideas, and this is what it's going to do.
And Jessica,
this is how it will affect, Jay in getting businesses to come to the city and be a part of our community.
And if we just take those 3 points and focus on those 3 points, we'd have a full plate for 2015, our first base year. So that would be a great thing to focus on. I really think that really strikes at the heart of the matter. It's where Gary started on the safety issue. No question that safety is a concern. I'd be maybe one of those people that either I'm blind or I'm nearsighted, but I walk through the downtown area frequently, frequent the restaurants, and generally do it with no fear, and a lot of times accompanied by my wife. But I understand what we're saying. There is a safety issue. We do see people that maybe appear a little bit scary to us, so we should address that.
Yeah. Live here full time. Again, I see it 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock as the ladies in my office are leaving. The rule is they don't leave alone. We always go down in twos. They have been approached by people on the street. Haven't been victims of crime, but it's uncomfortable. If that happens to other people, I mean, you would just say, well, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to let parts of my family go there unattended. So that has a cumulative effect. If that's not an issue, on parade day when it's shut down from the high school all the way to,
And safety is not just...
everyone's out. So
right,
there's a difference.
Safety is not just from crime. It's also from, like crossing Route 60 and things like that. It's overall safety.
Yes.
Jay wanted to say something, but Jay, I was going to ask you, when do we officially roll up the sidewalks in Vero Beach?
That I don't know.
9 p.m. exactly.
9 on the dot.
I just want to say, I realize that, the safety issue is probably not the capital improvement issue, but, safety is something that needs to be brought up. I mean, I've got a meeting coming here, I've got to leave, but what I'll do is I'll go ahead and call the police chief, and if you guys think there's an issue between 6 and 9, let's get some police guys, between those times, and let's see what happens. Let's get some police presence out there. So, if you guys have that safety concern, I mean, it's great that you guys have these meetings. Now we know. So let's see if we can take care of that here in the near future.
Gary, would that fit with or do you think 5 to 9 would be?
Well, I mean, those are the times as it gets dark that we're on more high alert. I mean, throughout the day, you see people that are transient, obviously, that are not, parents with their kids in the park. They're, you can tell either they're young out of work, somewhere in the 18 to 24 age, sitting on the park benches, or they're obviously displaced. I don't know what the draw is to the park and the public bathrooms there. I know there used to be, like I said, a food pantry in the parking lot behind, what was it, used to be the Thai restaurant there. It's now,
the Bangkok
Bangkok.
area.
It's now Blue Star,
I don't know if the food bank's still open. I think that used to be the draw. And then from there, after the food was done, they'd either sleep in the bushes or migrate. One of the questions is, and I don't know the answers, why are those folks there? Is there a draw? Can that draw be moved elsewhere? Because obviously, there's plenty of other places they stay. I mean, I've seen them on a cold day like this morning, just coming here, I was able to see tents in a couple areas that I hadn't seen before. So
There are other issues than just your area, too. Where we are down State Road 60, I mean, there was somebody sleeping out in front of our office one day. So, I mean, you're on the sidewalk. I mean, you're right on State Road 60, and, it happens. Was that you? But, so it happens everywhere. And I think just having that, like you said, calling the police chief, getting that presence out there a little bit more, we needed to get a few guys from our office to go, because when we go out to get our newspaper in the morning, that's when we saw it. And there have been crimes in our area that they have said, if you're walking out to your car and it is after 5 or you're going to be alone, make sure you have someone with you. And so we've just been more aware of our surroundings, and there are just empty lots places or empty houses that people tend to, flock to that, they can't be seen. And so it just makes that safety issue a huge thing, and just making the public who are coming in, but also business owners and people who work there, feel a little bit safer.
Well, we can ask, and I'll depart with this. I'll go ahead and talk to the police chief and see if we can't get a presence out there. On another note, I would just encourage you to make your motions and get your foundational items that need to be passed. Make sure they're down concrete, and if you guys have your wish list, you might be surprised we might be able to fit them in before ahead of times.
I just want to say this issue of safety, and I know you got to go, Jake. You don't have to stay. Thanks.
Thank you so much for calling the police chief for us. Thank you.
Take care, man. Sometimes safety issues can be addressed without the police. There are creative ways to do I'm just going to give you a simple example. I'm not saying this is something that can be done for everything, but it worked for me. I was having a problem with kids from the, not the high school, but the
Flick, Freshman Learning Center.
Yeah, hanging out at my building because there were two issues. One was that the bus stop was right in front of me. And then the other issue was that, we had a lot of shade out in front of my store, and they would like to just congregate there and, lean up against the building and sit around. I didn't really care that the kids were there, but they would leave garbage there. And twice a day, I had to go do garbage pickup. I looked at this for a couple of months, and what we did was very simple. We dug up the brick right alongside both sides of the building, and we planted bushes. That eliminated their desire to sit there.
Right.
The other thing we did was we appealed to the city, and they moved the bus stop a block down. They were very accommodating. They moved it about a block and a half down, and that was it. I have not had a problem since. So sometimes it's not, we have a limited amount of police force and what they can do. And they can't be everywhere all the time. Sometimes if you look at creative solutions for safety, and a lot of time that has to do with lighting, you can alter the situation or maybe lessen the problem. As part of that, I know that we can't as a group get together outside of here and talk about things, but I'm wondering if there's some way that officially, if we could, as a group, sometime in the next week, and I'd make myself available, go out and do a tour of our area. Mm-hmm. As a group. I mean, it's one thing to drive around and look at it ourselves, but I wonder if as a group, I don't know if that's allowed.
You can. I would have to go with you,
gagged.
or someone from the clerk's office would have to go with you. It has to be noticed, just like any other meeting, so the public can also go. And I still have to take minutes. You can't. Normally, you would go out and take a tour, and then come back here and meet and discuss what you saw. So everything is out for the public to hear.
And Barry, you're right. I mean, and the point I was making about where or the cause why folks are coming to these areas, and why they were, shade was the cause in your area, and you just placed the shade, and that was a good solution. That's what I'm saying as well. My limited experience in the one area, it wasn't the food pantry, because it's, hey, that's where they go because that's where the food is, and afterwards they don't disperse. Is there a way to, if those areas, that's just one area, and I don't know what's south of there. I mean, obviously there's some low income housing That's an issue. You can't really do much about that, but I think police presence may be required in some areas, certain times, but in other areas, is there ways to, whoever's behind those things, do it at different times of the day, certain times of the week, so those folks do disperse rather than being random. And cutting back the bushes was great. I saw probably 3 or 4 months ago, they came and whacked down all the sea grapes and stuff, and there's no place to hide in the shadows, which is comforting. So,
and two things I want to accomplish before we adjourn the meeting, and one is to set a time and a date for the next meeting, which we don't have, and it's very important that we meet, and we meet frequently because of our timetable. And the second is to continue along the path of these projects, and I'm talking about capital improvement projects. So I'm just going to throw a few things out there, and things that have been mentioned in the past. The band shell, we've already talked about. Lighting, great way to improve safety as well. Sidewalks, and I'm talking about widening sidewalks where we can. In many cases, we have a 4-foot sidewalk and a 2.5 or 3-foot strip of grass and then the curb, and maybe we can make that a 7-foot sidewalk. It might accommodate on-street dining. Anything that brings pedestrians here and brings people to the downtown area will increase the safety factor. So I always like that. State Road 60 is always an issue. We do have the traffic calming plan that the City Council has already passed for State Road 60, but it's something that we should look at and maybe even try and embark upon parking on at least one side of State Road 60. And Tim had talked about submitting a plan for traffic calming on 60 here in the near future. And that would be just some ideas in addition to the ideas that the rest of the committee has offered. But again, going back to the economic development plan and coming up with a list of projects that we could possibly accomplish with the goal of setting 2014 as our base year and 2015 as our first increment year. Tim?
The only thing I wanted to add, the other thing is that it wasn't brought up, and I can't guarantee anything. Remember, you can still ask for money coming out of the city budget for projects.
We can?
Yeah, I mean, just like any group that'll come up and ask for it. Doesn't mean the council's going to do it for you, but if you have some specific, some small projects that could be done, at least you would be able to start going. So don't feel, you can put that in as part of, you would say, city general fund or whatever fund it came from, and you can request that. It doesn't mean they're going to support it, but I mean, so don't feel that you're not, you're an advisor group to the council.
So, Tim, I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah, I want you to understand that.
Because in Main Street, we've done those joint projects with the city, and they've contributed, and we've contributed. And it's good for the committee to understand we can ask for things like that.Maybe they become part of the budget for the City of Vero Beach, perhaps not in 2014, but in 2015, 2016, looking forward, because we're talking about 1, 3, and 5-year plans. I don't know if we'll go out 10 years yet, because we need to focus on the immediate situation.
Jerry, we're about to start to get into budget season, so certainly the way your plan works, you could maybe have something you want to have go forward to start it. So, if you're able to do that, so don't feel constrained if you want.
And Tim, I don't know if you want, I believe April's budget season, am I right?
Yes, it'll start, but into June,
April, May,
and
something
that.
like that.
So,
okay.
And if you do have something you want, we'll need to, submit that through the process, and that's the way you get on to look at.
So the timing's perfect for this committee. So again, be bold about what you want to do, because we may get the city on board on some of these projects. Keep in mind, many of these projects are part of the vision plan. They're part of the most recent plan that we had, the review plan. And so a lot of these things have been out in front of the city council and the people of the city of Vero Beach for many, many years. So it's just a matter sometimes of implementation. But I'd like to just kind of go to a date for the next meeting and look at that real quickly.
I'd like to suggest that we meet 2 weeks from today. That would be the 11th. And the 4th, next week, maybe a little too soon, and also there's a parking committee meeting, which I would have to attend on that day. But the 11th is an open Wednesday for me. I don't know about the rest of you. I think if we meet in 2 weeks, that might be a good idea.
What is the city's schedule? What is the city's availability?
The chambers are available that morning.
Okay.
They're not
We did
available
another
in the
9:30.
afternoon.
So I could do 9:30 on the 11th, Barry. I've got an 11 o'clock appointment as I do today, and we'd like to keep these meetings as concise as we can and accomplish as much as we can, and maybe limit the meetings to an hour and a half, preferably 1 hour, but I realize that the work of the committee is important at this point, and so it may go over our 1 hour. But let's try to focus on having our ideas well organized for the committee and try and shoot for the 1 hour time limit. So 9:30 on February 11th. Sherry, is that going to work out?
Okay.
That'll work.
Okay.
I want to just look at this idea of doing taking an hour as a group and going through the different neighborhoods together. Does anyone else think that is a worthwhile idea? And I may be just
I do, except for the restrictions of Sunshine having to publish it in the meetings and have minutes taken. To do it between, I mean, I think we could all do it individually.
Right.
Between now and the
Maybe
next
what-
meeting.
right.
And if it's still a necessity.
Maybe what we could do is even ask, like, the four of us here to go at different times, because we're all then going to see different things. You know, if, say, you went early in the morning between 7 and 8, Terry did something more midday, like between, say, 11 and 12, and Gary did something more mid-afternoon, and then I could do something, say, from, say 5 to 6 or 5 to 6:30, and that way we all have the day covered to see what's really going on through our district at any given time.
okay.
So I like that idea, and actually keep in mind we could all go as a group. We just can't talk about things as a group. We could talk about the weather. We could talk about.
It would have to be officially.
Well, she would have to be
Yes,
there with us.
that's correct.
If
We'd
you're
have to
there
have
and
like a
it's officially
minivan or
sanctioned, it
something.
would be-
Right, we would have
would
to
in essence
advertise
be a
it.
meeting.
All right.
Right.
Not here, and it would
Forget
have
the
to
group
be-
idea.
The public would have to be
I mean,
allowed to come.
it can be done.
Okay.
Right.
But-
I mean, not before the 11th. And if
Right.
we're going to try to do this
Exactly.
before the 11th,
Right.
and doing it individually might get more information than if we.
So I would look to do that tour, as Barry has said, and maybe even focus on different areas. Barry, you're south of 60. Gary, you're north of 60. And try to do that tour sometime between the hours of, say, at least 5:30 and 9 p.m., and preferably, when it's dark, and see what's there. And if you don't feel safe, bring a friend along with you, or someone that can accompany you, because there's always strength in numbers. As long as it's not another committee member, you can have somebody accompany you and go on this tour, and really get a look at what some of these people that experience it on a day-to-day basis are seeing. It might give us a better appreciation.
All right. Okay. I think what I'd like to do, just personally, if we can't do it as a group, then I'd like to just get in my car and actually drive the boundaries, and drive those boundaries and look at those streets around the area, and then up and through. I've been all over the area, but looking at it from this point of view is a little different than just, I got to get over here or there. So I think even this weekend, that's
A good idea. Certainly, you'll cover more ground in the car, and you'll feel a lot safer in your car. I kind of like the
feel less safe in
experience
my
of being
car.
a pedestrian, because that's really what we're trying to relate to, is making this a more walkable area. But the car certainly can cover, and it is quite a big boundary. It would take quite a long time to walk it. I'm a biker, so I could certainly bike it pretty easily. But take some time between this and the next meeting and go out and try and experience some or all of this area as a pedestrian, as a passenger in a vehicle during those hours, and see what you can observe.
Ooh, it's also very easy to get the public records for the police calls within that geographic region for certain dates, for the past year. Find out what the nature of the calls typically are, where they're located, where the hot spots are, if you want to call them that. I know there's convenience stores. Obviously, there's some issues there. Some of the low-income housing, and then you get the parks and then places like that. We'll figure out whether it's just perception of a person in one area, like what I see,
Right.
but really there's a worse problem somewhere else.
Can we
Some of the
request that from the city?
Public records.
Yes, I'll get that information for you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Do some of the homework
Can-
for us that way, since the
Can we then, when we do our tour, maybe make a list of 4 or 5 items that come within the safety, the beautification, and the awareness areas that we'd like to concentrate on, that we can bring to our plan for the next meeting? And that way we'll have Barry's ideas, my ideas, your ideas, Gary's ideas, so that we can then take those and streamline what our actual ultimate goal is.
What I'll do, and I'll submit it to Sherry, I'll try and make a brief outline, at least of the capital side of this and maybe of some of the idea side of this, submit it to Sherry for distribution to the committee within the next week, so it'll be well prior to the next meeting.
Good.
Okay. Maybe we can all do that. If we have ideas, give that to you so it can be distributed.
Great. If there's nothing else, then are there any other comments or any comments from Mark, Tim? And Mark, we thank you for being here, and my apologies to you. I thought maybe you're accompanying Tim here on official City of Vero Beach business. But if there's no other business, then the meeting is adjourned, and thank you so much for coming.